Welcome to the debate. Today, we're dissecting Sidney Lumet's enduring 1957 classic, 12 Angry Men. This film is just a phenomenal feat of cinematic tension, confining us to a sweltering New York City jury room as 12 men argue the fate of a young defendant facing the electric chair.
And what unfolds within that stifling box is a nearly 96-minute masterclass in human behavior. The central tension this work forces us to confront is, well, it's where its lasting value truly resides. Is its primary importance derived from its sheer artistic execution, the direction, the scripting, the dramatic spectacle, or is it fundamentally significant as a meticulous case study and a powerful critique of the American legal system and the mechanics of human persuasion?
My position is that 12 Angry Men is a timeless triumph of high dramatic art. Lumet, in his feature debut, elevates what is essentially a chamber piece into a cinematic landmark through, masterful staging, an unforgettable ensemble performance, and a script that ensures every single moment is charged with tension. It endures as pure, riveting drama.
See, I disagree with the premise that its artistic merit can be separated from its didactic power. I would argue that the film's critical status is secured precisely because it functions as a highly detailed, persuasive dissection of social conformity, deep-seated prejudice, and the specific psychological processes required to dismantle a majority consensus.
Well, the film's power starts with its visual language, which is far more sophisticated than a mere recording of a play. Lumet understood that if the dialogue and setting remain constrained, the camera itself must become the emotional agitator. He initially shoots from high angles, positioning the audience above the jurors, giving us a comfortable, objective distance. We are observers, looking down on the process.
That perspective is strategic, I agree, but I contend it serves the analytical structure.
It's more than that, I think. As the deliberation progresses and that initial 11-to-1 consensus cracks, Lumet gradually shifts the camera. By the final acts, we are trapped at eye level, then eventually below the jurors, looking up. The shots become tighter, the close-ups more intense. This is not just a technique. It is a masterclass in calculated claustrophobia. He forces the viewer into the same physical and moral pressure cooker as the characters, transforming the viewing experience from objective observation into a visceral, suffocating engagement. The increasing darkness of the background and the tightening frames are artistic choices designed for dramatic effect, irrespective of the underlying theory.
I acknowledge the brilliance of that visual evolution, but it perfectly mirrors the intellectual journey of overcoming systemic bias. The shift from high observation to low visceral engagement is the dramatic expression of juror number 8 successfully applying principles of rhetoric and psychology to penetrate the surface certainty of the group. The film's utility is its detailed analysis of how this persuasion is achieved against immense inertia.
Can you elaborate on that inertia a bit?
Absolutely. Juror number 8 essentially employs Aristotle's framework of artistic evidence, the three means of persuasion, with surgical precision. He establishes ethos immediately. He is calm, well-spoken, and morally composed, which gives him credibility against the loud, prejudiced voices. He utilizes logos through pure reason, systematically dismantling circumstantial evidence, questioning the old man's timing, the reliability of the murder weapon, and the woman's eyewitness testimony.
And the pathos? That's where the drama truly ignites, isn't it?
Precisely. Pathos, the emotional appeal, is leveraged masterfully when he provokes juror number 3 until the latter, consumed by his own personal anger, screams, "I'll kill him." This dramatic explosion isn't just a character moment. It's the functional proof that the phrase used by the prosecution to establish the defendant's motive is often just an expression of momentary rage, not genuine murderous intent. The theoretical structure is the foundation upon which the dramatic intensity is built.
But that moment of emotional collapse where juror number 3 is forced to confront his own projected rage onto the defendant is powerful because it reveals a profound character flaw, his fractured relationship with his son. It's a moment of high catharsis, really the stuff of classic tragedy. If the film were merely a case study,
Why would it invest so heavily in such melodramatic character exposition?
Because human psychology dictates that conviction isn't solely logical. The film showcases specific group dynamics. Consider the first vote, that nervous, tentative raising of hands by several jurors. That hesitation is textbook normative social influence. They conform to the initial majority simply to avoid appearing deviant, fearing social isolation more than a mistake in judgment.
That's a descriptive label for what is, a pretty universal human phenomenon.
It's more than a label, it's a predictive framework. Contrast that hesitation with the effort applied by the key players. Juror number 7, the fan desperate to get to the Yankees game, represents pure social loafing, minimal effort in a group setting. Juror number 8, meanwhile, engages in intense social compensation, working harder and applying himself specifically because of the palpable indifference or prejudice of others. The film is structured to illuminate these opposing forces.
That analysis is compelling, but let's address the central flaw that suggests the film prioritizes dramatic structure over analytical realism. The utter implausibility that absolutely no one involved in the case thought to bring up the many points and flaws in the evidence uncovered during the jury discussion. The drama requires a monumental failure of the prosecution, defense, and police work to even exist.
That perceived implausibility is necessary to highlight the core systemic flaws. The film isn't aiming for strict courtroom procedure. It's showing how deep-seated prejudice and tunnel vision like juror number 10's horrific bigotry against slum dwellers obscure the truth. The reason juror 8 has to dismantle the case brick by brick is to expose how the trial system allows those biases to prevail unchecked. The entire narrative hinges on proving that the system failed to deliver basic scrutiny.
But look at the most dramatic, pivotal moment of scrutiny. Juror 8's famous reveal of the identical knife, purchased outside the courtroom. This is clear juror misconduct. He walked through the boy's neighborhood and bought evidence not properly vetted in court, then presented it during deliberation. The moment is dramatically potent. It's the film's most iconic spectacle, but legally it's toxic. This choice confirms that Lumet prioritizes the spectacular, character-driven dramatic climax over a pure, realistic critique of legal rules.
But the misconduct is a functional necessity for the persuasion argument. It provides the concrete, visual logos required to challenge the group's confidence in the prosecution's central pillar, that the knife was unique. It's a necessary cinematic fiction to neutralize a strong psychological barrier. Juror 8 couldn't convince juror number 4, the highly rational stockbroker, with mere philosophical doubt. He needed physical evidence to force that rational juror to confront his own confidence in the facts.
Speaking of juror number 4, the film's status as dramatic powerhouse is equally tied to specific directorial choices that transcend the analytical framework. Think about the setting itself. Lumet made the creative decision to shoot the room in sequence, chronologically. As the film progresses and the jurors grow tired, the lights change, the air thickens, and the storm breaks outside.
Ah, the storm.
Yes, the storm is pure, externalized dramatic pressure. It's a classic cinematic device, pathetic fallacy, where the external weather reflects the internal psychological turmoil. The sudden, cleansing downpour at the end, just as the final vote is cast, offers a dramatic release that suggests moral resolution. This is poetry, not policy. It's Lumet using atmosphere and sound, the roar of the rain, the sudden silence, to heighten the viewer's emotional journey, independent of whether the jury correctly identified the defendant's guilt or innocence.
I find that reading of the storm a little too neat, suggesting an easy emotional resolution that the core debate about reasonable doubt tries to avoid. Let's talk about persuasion again, specifically focusing on the mechanics of individual jurors' shifts. You frame these shifts as profound character revelations, but I see them as predictable, theoretical outcomes.
I disagree with your premise there. You're reducing profound character arcs to mere demonstrations of theory.
Then let's look at juror number 12, the advertising executive. His erratic behavior, swinging his vote from guilty to not guilty and then back to guilty, before settling on not guilty, is a perfect example of informational social influence. He's trained in marketing, he's adept at reading the pulse of a meeting, but lacks deep internal conviction. His shifts are a demonstration of what we call peripheral route processing.
That's a mouthful. Can you explain that for the audience?
Certainly. Peripheral route processing means he isn't focusing on the deep, difficult logic of the evidence. That's the central route. Instead, he's swayed by the strongest, most immediate surface-level argument, or, the momentum of the group. He operates without principle, making him a perfect foil to juror number 8's rigorous, central route arguments. His erratic behavior is a predictable function of group dynamics, not some unique artistic portrayal of a soulless American.
But the dramatic climax for juror number 4, the rational stockbroker, is entirely personal. Lumet builds him up as the unflappable man, the one who doesn't ever sweat. Juror 8 targets his reliance on logic, using the memory test about movie titles to expose his fallibility. Juror 4 begins to stutter and sweat precisely when his intellectual facade is cracked open. That moment isn't just a win for Logos, it's the dramatic revelation that logic, even when highly disciplined, is still vulnerable to human error. The tension in that scene is purely characterization.
The tension works because Juror 8 successfully targeted his appeal. He knew that to sway Juror 4, he needed to attack his specific weakness, the absolute faith in his own perfect memory and objectivity. That is strategic application of psychological insight, not simply hoping a character breaks down dramatically. Juror 8 customizes his approach based on the jurors' personalities and demographics, which is why he used logos on the stockbroker and pathos on the foreman.
And I return to juror number 3. When he finally breaks down, weeping over the picture of his estranged son, this moment justifies the film as classical drama. His vote was never about the facts of the case. It was a revenge against his own family failures, projected onto the defendant. That raw catharsis, the shedding of his prejudice, is what the entire film builds toward. It's the ultimate payoff for investing in the character's internal turmoil, making it a masterpiece of writing and performance.
I agree that Juror 3's moment is crucial, but its critical value lies in illuminating the dangerous interaction between personal trauma and civic duty. It's a cautionary tale showing that the search for justice is contaminated when rational process is replaced by emotional transference. The film's greatest legacy is ensuring we scrutinize that contamination.
Yet the final convergence, the moment the jury finds its moral high ground, isn't led by a theorist or a rationalist. It's achieved by juror number 11, the immigrant watchmaker whose life experiences provide him with the deepest appreciation for democratic responsibility. When juror number 7 changes his vote purely to make his baseball game, juror 11 stops the room, not to apply theory, but to deliver a blistering moral condemnation. He challenges juror 7's lack of guts to do what is right.
And that is a powerful moment of civic rhetoric, demonstrating the high moral ethos of a man who understands the value of the democratic process. But even that moral statement functions to guide the group back toward objective, analytical deliberation. It reminds the group why they must engage in rigorous evaluation, confirming the necessity of the analytical framework.
Ultimately, while 12 Angry Men offers rich material for dissecting group psychology and persuasion theories, and its structural adherence to these principles is undeniable, it is the execution that secures its place in the canon. The masterful artistic construction, the oppressive blocking that pushes the men into confrontation, the dynamic direction that physically shifts the viewer's perspective, and the sheer power of that ensemble performance ensures it endures as high dramatic art, capable of moving us regardless of its didactic value.
I believe the film's enduring power is inseparable from its utility as a mirror, challenging the illusion of certainty. It reminds us that complexity requires deep consideration, and that the pursuit of justice necessitates rigorous doubt, a powerful message delivered explicitly through its relentless dissection of how persuasion works and how quickly human prejudice and conformity can obscure reality.
And perhaps the genius of 12 Angry Men lies in its ability to satisfy both intellectual imperatives. The film ensures the audience, much like the juries themselves, leaves the room questioning the material, acknowledging that understanding opposing viewpoints, whether on the evidence of the case or the primary value of the film itself, ultimately strengthens our own beliefs.